You guys, I am still trying to wrap my head around what happened last night. My world just kind of exploded, and I'm sitting here in the wreckage, trying to figure out which way is up. My boyfriend of 6 years, Alex, dumped me. That's not even the worst part. He did it at his medical school graduation party, which I planned and paid for, in front of his entire family and all of his new fancy friends. After he basically called me trash, I just smiled, raised my glass, and said, "To Alex." I think he wanted me to fall apart, to scream or cry, but I was just empty. I walked out of there without another word. That was last night. This morning, my phone started buzzing at 7 a.m., and it literally has not stopped. I've got missed calls from his mom, his dad, his sister, and about a dozen from Alex himself, using a blocked number. I guess the state medical board finally got around to reviewing his application, and the perfect life he built for himself is already starting to look like a pile of rubble. And I guess they all think I'm the one who lit the match. Let me give you some backstory so this all makes sense. I've been with Alex for 6 years, since we were both 21. When we met, I was a waitress at a nice steakhouse downtown, saving up every dollar I could, because I had this dream of opening my own little bistro one day. He was a pre-med student, full of big talk about saving the world. He was charming and smart, and I fell for him hard. When he got into a top medical school, the tuition was insane. His parents are well off, but Alex has this massive pride thing and insisted on doing it on his own. I was so proud of him for that. I told him we were a team, that we'd figure it out together. I just didn't realize that we actually meant me. For the next 6 years, my life stopped being my own. It was all about him. I worked my way up to floor manager at the restaurant, but I never gave up my weekend shifts because the tips were too good to pass up. Every single extra dollar I made went straight into an account for him. I called it the Dr. Alex Fund. That account paid for his tuition when his student loans didn't cover it all. It paid for his ridiculously expensive textbooks that probably cost more than their weight in gold. It paid for his rent on the apartment we shared, an apartment we only moved to so he could be closer to campus, which meant I now had an hour-long bus ride to work every morning because, of course, I had to sell my car. The $500 a month I was spending on my car payment was, in his words, better invested in our future. I remember one time, about 3 years ago, he needed a new laptop because his old one was too slow to run some program for his classes. It was $2,000. I didn't have it. I had just paid for his lab fees for the semester. So I sold a gold necklace my grandmother had left me. It was the only really nice piece of jewelry I owned. I told him my mom had given me the money as a gift. I couldn't stand to see the look on his face if he knew I'd sold a piece of my own history to buy him a computer. He just said, "Oh, that's great, honey," and was more excited about the laptop than anything else. That should have been a sign. The sacrifices just kept piling up. I put off getting a cavity filled for 6 months, because the money for the dentist had to go toward the fee for one of his certification exams. I remember my tooth aching every night while I was quizzing him on pharmacology, and I would just smile and pretend everything was fine. My life became a series of spreadsheets and budgets, figuring out how many extra shifts I needed to work to cover his next expense. My dream of a bistro got smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. It was all for him. He was going to be a doctor, and he'd take care of me. He promised. "Just a little longer, Clara," he'd say, kissing my forehead after I'd just gotten home from a 14-hour shift. "When I'm a doctor, you'll never have to smell like steak again unless you want to eat one." The change in him was gradual, like the tide going out. You don't notice it until you look up and realize the entire beach is different. The further he got in his program, the more he started looking down on my life. My job, which was paying for his entire existence, suddenly became embarrassing to him. We went to a dinner once with a couple of his classmates. They were all from these rich doctor families. One of them, a girl named Tiffany, who looked like she'd never worked a day in her life, asked me what I did. Before I could even open my mouth, Alex jumped in with this breezy laugh and said, "Clara's in the hospitality industry. She's a real people person." He patted my hand like I was a golden retriever. It was the first time I felt like he was ashamed of me. It got worse. He started making little comments about my clothes, my friends. Like best friend, Sarah, who is also a waitress, came over one night, and after she left, Alex said, "You know, I don't think Sarah is really on your level anymore, Clara. Her ambitions are a little limited, don't you think?" I just stared at him. Sarah was the one who had driven me to the emergency room when I cut my hand at work because Alex was too busy studying to be bothered. The final undeniable proof that the man I loved was gone came about 8 months ago. He was in his last year, and the pressure was insane. He was working on a huge research paper that was a massive part of his final grade. He was always locked in his office, telling me not to bother him. One night, I was cleaning up, and I went to grab his laundry from his office. His laptop was open, and I saw his email. I know, I shouldn't have snooped. But the subject line just jumped out at me. It said, "Final exam materials, confirmed." My hands were shaking, but I clicked on it. It was an email from that rich classmate of his, Mark. Attached was a PDF file. I opened it. It was the full final exam for his most important class, with the complete answer key. They had gotten it from a resident who worked at the hospital. They had bought the test. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I scrolled through the email chain, and they were talking about splitting the cost, wiring money to this resident's account. It wasn't just Mark, it was a whole group of them, and Alex was organizing it. I felt like I was going to be sick. All those nights I stayed up quizzing him, all the pride I felt when he'd get a top grade, it was all a lie. He wasn't a genius. He was just a rich kid with no morals, a cheater. A few weeks later, I was deep cleaning our apartment, and I found a USB drive hidden in a shoebox in the back of his closet. I don't know why, but I had a bad feeling. I plugged it into my laptop. It was full of medical articles and research papers from all over the world, and it also had the final version of his big research paper. I started comparing them. It was a copy and paste job. He had stolen entire paragraphs, pages even, from a thesis written by a doctor in Sweden. He had just rephrased a few words here and there. He didn't write that paper. He had stolen it. He was a fraud, through and through. That was the moment I stopped loving him. It was like a light switch flipped off in my heart. The man I had sacrificed everything for didn't exist. He was a character in a story I had told myself. In his place was this stranger who was lazy, arrogant, and dishonest. A man who would cheat his way into a profession where people's lives were in his hands. I didn't confront him. The old me would have. The old me would have cried and yelled. But the new me, the me that was born in that moment, was cold and quiet. I knew what I had to do. I spent the next few weeks gathering my evidence. I forwarded the emails to a new, secret email account I made. I downloaded the entire contents of that USB drive. I took screenshots of everything. I was no longer his girlfriend. I was a prosecutor building a case. I let him finish the year. I watched him take his final exams knowing he had the answers. I watched him submit his stolen paper. I even helped him address the invitations for his graduation party. I smiled and played the part of the proud, supportive girlfriend. I wanted him to get to the very top of the mountain. I wanted him to feel completely untouchable. I knew the fall would be that much harder. So last night at the party, when he stood up to make his speech, I was ready. I stood next to him, smiling, while he thanked his family and professors. Then he turned to me. The whole room was watching. And finally, he said, his voice full of this fake emotion, "I want to thank Clara." He paused for dramatic effect. "She's been a huge support, but as we all know, chapters end. My life is moving in a new direction, and that direction requires a partner who is my equal." He took a small step away from me, physically creating a space between us for everyone to see. "I'm a doctor now," he announced, like he was the first person in history to ever achieve it. "And I need a wife who isn't a waitress." The silence in the room was deafening. I could see his mother's horrified face, his father's embarrassment. But I also saw a few of his rich friends trying to hide their smirks. This was the punchline to a joke they had all been in on. And then he delivered the final blow. Looking not at me, but at the crowd. "A girl like you should be grateful I let you come along for the ride." And that's when I smiled. A real genuine smile. Because I knew that a thick manila envelope is sitting in a mailbox, addressed to the State Medical Licensing Board. I knew that the ride was about to get very, very bumpy for him. I raised my champagne flute. My hand wasn't even shaking. "To Alex," I said, my voice clear and loud, "may you get everything you truly deserve." I set the glass down, turned around, and walked out of that party. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew the chaos would find him soon, enough, and judging by the state of my phone this morning, it has. First update. Hey guys, it's been 3 days since I posted. First of all, thank you so much for all the supportive comments. I literally read every single one of them, and it really helped me get through the first day after the party, from hell. I pretty much just turned my phone off, ordered a giant pizza, and watched garbage reality TV until I fell asleep. When I woke up, for a split second, I forgot what had happened. I saw the dent on the other side of the bed and thought, oh, Alex must have gotten up early. And then it all came crashing back down, and I have to admit, I cried. I think I was crying for the guy I used to love, the one who disappeared a long time ago. But after that, a weird feeling started to creep in. It was relief. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't have to think about someone else's needs before my own. The feeling was so new, I almost didn't recognize it. So, I finally turned my phone back on, and it was a complete circus. I had about 50 notifications. The voicemails from his mom, Eleanor, were a trip. The first one was just her, crying, saying, "Clara, please call me. There's been a terrible mistake with Alex's licensing. We need to clear this up." The next one, a few hours later, was way more frantic. I could hear his dad, Robert, in the background. She was saying, "Clara, Alex just got an email from the university. They're reviewing his degree for academic misconduct. What is going on? Did you say something to someone?" The last one was just her sobbing. "He won't come out of his room, Clara. Please, just tell me what you know." Then there were the texts from Alex. Oh boy. They were a journey. They started out furious. "What did you do? You are ruining my entire life. I will sue you for this." Then they moved to panicked. "Clara, they are talking about taking my degree away. My life is over. This is all your fault." Then came the attempts at gaslighting. "I know I hurt you, but you are taking this too far. I was just stressed out, I didn't mean it." And finally, the pleading. "Okay, I'm sorry. I was a jerk. Please just help me fix this. I can't lose everything. We can talk about it. I still love you." I actually laughed out loud at that last one. I still love you. The nerve of this guy. I just hit the block button. I blocked him on everything. His friends too. I didn't need to see their confused posts about what was happening with their star doctor. His sister, Chloe, sent me a text that was different from the others. She's always been the most normal one in that family. Her text just said, "Hey Clara, I don't know what's happening with Alex and the school, but I do know that what he did to you at that party was the cruelest thing I've ever seen. No one deserves that. I hope you're okay." That one message meant more to me than all her family's frantic calls combined. It was a little sign that I wasn't completely crazy, that someone else saw him for who he really was. So, to answer all of your questions from my first post, here's exactly what I did. Remember that folder of evidence I told you about? The emails, the proof he bought the exam, the stolen research paper, all of it? Well, I made 2 identical copies. They were beautiful. I had everything organized with tabs and notes. I put them into 2 big mailing envelopes. The morning after he got his final grades, I mailed them out. One went to the Dean of Student Affairs at his medical school. The other went directly to the State Medical Licensing Board. I sent them anonymously, of course. The letter I included just laid out the facts and said that as a concerned citizen, I believed a man with no integrity shouldn't be allowed to practice medicine. I knew that an official investigation takes time. They have to review the evidence, interview people, and follow a process. My whole plan was based on that timing. I knew the notification would probably hit him right after his graduation, right when he was feeling on top of the world. And that's exactly what happened. The board put an immediate hold on his application to be a licensed doctor, pending the outcome of the investigation, and the university, now that they have proof he cheated, has started its own process to revoke his degree. He's not a doctor. He's just a guy with a 6-figure student loan debt and a worthless piece of paper hanging on his wall. After blocking Alex and listening to his mom's tearful voicemails, I did something for myself. I opened my laptop, went to my bank account, and looked at years of statements. For hours, I went through every single transaction. I made a spreadsheet. I listed every tuition payment I'd made for him, every time I'd paid his rent, every textbook, every lab fee, every dollar I'd spent on his food and bills. It was painful. I saw a charge for a fancy dinner and remembered it was our anniversary. But we had to leave early because he got a call from a study group. I saw the charge for the plane ticket I bought him to fly to an interview in another state, and remembered I ate ramen noodles for a week to afford it. Each line item was a memory of me putting him first. By the time I was done, the spreadsheet was 6 pages long. I put in a formula to add it all up. Then I added a little bit for interest, because why not? The final number stared back at me from the screen. $214,350. Seeing it all laid out like that, it wasn't just money. It was my life, my 20s, my own dreams, deferred and denied, all in a single cell on a spreadsheet. I printed it out, and it felt heavier than any textbook he ever owned. Last night, I finally texted Chloe back. I thanked her for her kind words. Then I wrote, "Your parents want to talk to me. Tell them I will meet them tomorrow at noon. At the Hawthorne Grill. That's my restaurant, my home turf." I told her they could come alone. I'm not nervous. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just ready. They want to talk about fixing things? Okay. Let's talk about what Alex needs to fix. And he can start by paying me back. Second update. So the big meeting happened yesterday. I got to the restaurant about an hour early for my shift, but I told my manager I needed to handle something first. He knows the whole story, and he's been amazing. He sat me in the best booth in the back corner, the one that's kind of private, and said, "Take all the time you need. We got your back." A few of the other waitresses gave me these little thumbs up as they walked by. It felt good not to be alone in this. I sat there with my folder of evidence and the invoice sitting on the table next to me, and I just drank a coffee and waited. For the first time, I felt like I was the one in control. His parents showed up exactly at noon. Robert, the dad, was holding the door open for Eleanor, the mom, and they both had these grim, serious looks on their faces. They looked like they were walking into a legal deposition, not a restaurant. They sat down across from me, and Eleanor immediately tried to put on this warm, motherly face. But her eyes were all wrong. "Clara, thank you for meeting us," she started, reaching across the table to try and take my hand. I just moved it to my coffee cup. "We know you're hurt. We are so sorry for what Alex said. It was unforgivable. But he's our son, and his whole future is about to be destroyed. He's worked so hard for this." "Has he?" I asked. My voice was totally flat. "Has he worked hard?" Robert jumped in, his voice low and serious. "What my wife is trying to say, Clara, is that we need to be rational. People make mistakes, especially when they're young. An accusation like this, even if it's retracted, can leave a permanent stain. You're alleging serious academic fraud. That's a form of defamation if you can't back it up with concrete proof." He was trying to scare me, the lawyer doing his lawyer thing. I just stared at him for a second. Then, without saying a word, I pushed the folder across the table toward him. "Here's my concrete proof," I said. "Why don't you both take a look, and then we can talk about who is defaming whom." Robert opened it, and Eleanor leaned over his shoulder. I just sat there, sipping my coffee, watching their faces. It was actually kind of fascinating. I watched Robert's eyes scan the first page, which was the email chain of Alex and his friends arranging to buy the final exam. His jaw tightened. I saw Eleanor's hand fly to her mouth, and she made this little gasping sound. She looked at me, her eyes wide with horror, and I just gave her a little nod, like, "Yep, it's all real." They spent the next 10 minutes in dead silence, just turning the pages. They saw the proof of the wire transfers to the resident who leaked the test. They saw the side-by-side comparison of Alex's research paper and the thesis from the Swedish doctor, with all the stolen paragraphs highlighted in yellow. It was undeniable. By the time they got to the last page, Robert's whole body had slumped. The lawyer was gone. He just looked like a defeated old man. I didn't know," Eleanor whispered, her voice cracking. "I had no idea." "Well, now you do," I said. That's when all hell broke loose. The door to the restaurant flew open, and there was Alex. He must have been waiting outside. He looked like a mess. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He spotted us in the back and stomped over, his face all twisted with rage. "What are you doing?" he yelled, pointing at his parents. "Are you seriously talking to her? She's the one who did this." He then turned to me and his voice got dangerously low. You are a vindictive, evil person. You're destroying my life because I broke up with you." A couple of my coworkers started to walk over, but I just gave them a little shake of my head. I could handle this. "I'm not doing this because you broke up with me, Alex," I said calmly. "I'm doing this because you're a fraud. You're a cheater and a liar, and you don't deserve to be a doctor." "I do deserve it," he screamed, and he actually slammed his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. "I spent years of my life studying." "No," I said, my voice cutting through his tantrum. "I spent years of my life working so you could study, and it turns out you weren't even doing that. You were just buying the answers." I tapped the folder. "It's all in there. Your parents just saw it. The party's over." He looked from the folder to his parents' heartbroken faces, and something in him seemed to snap. He started trying to grab the folder, yelling, "You can't prove anything. That's all fake." His dad, Robert, put a hand on his arm. "Alex, stop. Just stop." "No." Alex shook him off. "She's trying to poison you against me. She's just a bitter waitress who couldn't stand that I was going to be someone important." And that was it. That was the line. I reached down into my bag and pulled out the invoice, the 6-page spreadsheet I had made. I stood up and spread it out on the table in front of him, right next to the folder of evidence. "You're right, Alex. I am a waitress," I said, my voice loud and clear. "And this is my bill. For every shift I worked to pay for your apartment, for every textbook I bought you, for the $500 I gave you for that interview suit. The one you're probably still paying off your credit card for. See this line item here? That's the necklace from my dead grandmother that I sold to fix your car. And this one? That's the dental surgery I had to put off for a year so you could take your board exams. It's all here. 6 years of my life, my work, my body breaking down, all so you can become this big, important man." I leaned in closer. "You want to talk about what you deserve? You deserve to pay your debts. The total is at the bottom. $214,350. The entire table was silent. Alex stared at the pages, his mouth hanging open. He looked like he couldn't breathe. His mom was openly sobbing now, and his dad just looked empty, staring at the invoice like it was a death certificate. I picked up my purse and my coffee cup. "I think we're done here," I said. I looked right at Robert. "I expect to be contacted about a payment plan. Otherwise, my next meeting will be with an actual lawyer, not a pretend one." I turned and walked away. I could feel every eye in the restaurant on me. I walked right up to the front counter, put my apron on, and said to my manager, "Okay, I'm ready for my shift." He just looked at me with this huge smile and said, "You are a rock star." Walking away from that table, leaving them in the middle of the mess they had created, felt better than any graduation ever could. Final update. Hey everyone, it's been about 6 months since my last update, and I think it's finally time to close the book on this whole saga. So much has happened, and almost all of it is good. First, the official fallout for Alex. About a month after the showdown at the restaurant, Chloe texted me. She sent me a screenshot of an official notice from the university's Student Affairs Office. They had concluded their investigation and found Alex guilty on all counts of academic fraud. His medical degree was officially and permanently revoked. A few weeks after that, the state licensing board released its own decision, which was public record. His application for a medical license was denied with prejudice, meaning he is permanently barred from ever practicing medicine in this state. He's not a doctor, he'll never be a doctor. All of that sacrifice, all of his lies and cheating, it was all for nothing. Now for the money. About 2 weeks after the restaurant meeting, a courier showed up at my apartment. He had a big, important-looking envelope from Robert Hartman's law firm. Inside was a cashier's check for the full $214,350. I just stared at it for probably 10 minutes. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my freedom. It was my 20s back. It was every double shift, every skipped meal, every tear I cried, all rolled up into one beautiful, crisp check. I didn't even cry. I just folded it up, put it in my purse, and walked to the bank. The feeling of seeing that number appear in my own bank account was indescribable. The very next day, I walked into my job, found my manager, and gave him my 2 weeks' notice. He just gave me a massive hug and said, "It's about time." On my last day, the entire staff threw a surprise party for me. They all pitched in and bought me a beautiful set of professional chef's knives. My friend Sarah gave a little speech about how proud she was of me for finally choosing myself. I definitely cried then, but they were happy tears. It was the perfect goodbye to a life that was no longer mine. So what did I do with the money? The first thing I did was I called my dentist and got my tooth fixed. Best $1,000 I ever spent. After that, I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I applied to the best culinary institute in the state. I used a chunk of the money to pay the entire tuition up front. No loans, no budgets, no stress. My first day of class was terrifying and amazing. I was surrounded by people who were all there because they loved food. The work was intense, way harder than I ever imagined. We worked 12-hour days, learning everything from butchering a chicken to making a perfect hollandaise sauce. But I loved every single second of it. The long hours didn't kill me, they fueled me. Because this time, the work was for me. I discovered I had a real talent for baking and pastries, a kind of patient, precise work that I found incredibly peaceful. My old life was about running around, serving other people's creations. My new life was about creating something beautiful with my own 2 hands. I graduated at the top of my class 2 months ago. And then I started looking for a space. I spent weeks searching for the perfect spot, and I finally found it. It's a small, sunny corner shop in a great neighborhood, right on a busy street. Last week I signed the lease. My lawyer, a real one, that I hired myself, looked over the whole thing. I'm standing in that empty space right now. The walls are still bare and it smells like fresh paint. But if I close my eyes, I can see it. I can see the little tables, the pastry case full of things I've made, the espresso machine humming. There's a huge banner hanging in the front window. It says, "Coming soon." And underneath, in beautiful gold letters, is the name I chose. It's called the Grateful Waitress Bistro. I haven't heard a word from Alex or his family since that day, other than the check arriving. Chloe and I text sometimes, just checking in. She told me Alex had to get a job as a clerk at a shipping company. He's living in his parents' basement. He's a ghost of the big, important man he thought he was going to be. It's funny. He told me I should be grateful for the ride he took me on. But the truth is, I'm just grateful I got off. I wouldn't be here, in my own almost restaurant, if he hadn't shown me his true colors. He thought my life as a waitress was small, but he didn't realize that from my vantage point, I saw everything. I saw kindness and cruelty. I saw love and lies. I learned how to read people, how to be patient, and how to work harder than anyone else in the room. He thought my job was a weakness, but in the end, it was my superpower. Thank you all again for being on this journey with me. The next time you hear from me, it will hopefully be with an invitation to the grand opening.